Paolo, it's great to welcome you back to the London Film Festival, and we're going to range pretty widely over your career and come back to youth. But I think people are always intrigued when they see a director who's now enjoying and has made a whole range of different work and enjoying considerable success with films. How you started? I mean, you're a Neapolitan. You come from Naples.
Yes.
And you grew up and studied in Naples. Did you always know that you wanted to? Was it the thing you wanted to do from a child? When did you want to become a filmmaker?
Cosa volevo fare da bambino e cosa mi ha portato a
quale
fare?
punto della tua infanzia hai capito che volevi fare il regista? Fin da bambino piccolo?
No, I understood that I say in Italian, ok?
Yes.
Ho capito che volevo fare il regista a 19 anni, dopo aver visto un film di Tornatore.
Paolo decided to become a filmmaker when he was 19 after he watched the film by Tornatore.
Poi ho deciso di fare il regista quando ho capito che si poteva fare tutto un po' male.
And then he decided to become a filmmaker when he realized that by doing that you could do everything not quite rightly.
Cioè si dovevano conoscere le cose un po', non troppo bene.
So you had to know everything but not exceedingly well, just a little bit.
Prima volevo fare il musicista, ma avevo capito che bisognava esercitarsi troppo.
Beforehand, he wanted to be a musician, but he realized that you really have to practice to be very good.
Sì, insomma, ma sembra una battuta, ma la verità è il regista è un lavoro per dilettanti e questo mi piace molto.
It seems to be a joke, but it isn't. Being a film director is a job for a dilettante, and that really intrigues him.
But usually film directors always have the biggest struggle making their first film. How hard? Because you made One Man Up in 2001, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, 2001. And you obviously made some shorts before. How difficult was it to get the first feature made? Was it? Did you spend years doing it, preparing for it, or was it something that happened quite quickly?
No, it was pretty difficult because the first movie had a script very tricky. So my producer that's here, Nicola Giuliano, that we did all the movies together, he forced me to write 11 drafts. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's tough.
So it was difficult for this reason, to write and rewrite several drafts, and no, but for the rest I was usually lucky to find money. Just for when I did Il Divo, it's a movie about an Italian politician. Yes. It was a little bit harder to find the money.
But the film, I mean, obviously you made that, and then and you came here with Consequence of Love. That was the film that I remember that you suddenly achieved a certain international attention. That the film Consequence of Love went around the world. It was bought by a number of countries. It was released here, and that seemed to be the moment when you started to break through outside of Italy with Consequences of Love, and obviously the performance by, again, a regular collaborator of yours, Tony Servillo. And you then did make this decision, as you just mentioned, to make a film where you made Family Friend, and then you made another film with Servillo, which we're going to show a clip of, Consequences of Love, about an Italian politician. And I did wonder, I mean, we're going to say it's the first clip. I'd love to have time to show a clip of Family Friend and a clip of Consequences of Love, but we don't. But we're going to show this clip, first clip of Il Divo, and let's have a look at Tony Servillo playing Andreotti.
Yeah.
So several things about that. First of all, I need to ask you about Tony Servillo. He was in your first film. He's been a regular collaborator, and he's also got a very strong link to Neapolitan culture in terms of he's a great proselytizer for Neapolitan theatre, etc. Was that your connection to him? Was there a Neapolitan sensibility between you and Tony Servillo? How did you become friends and collaborators?
It's a friendship based on the laugh. We laugh each other together a lot, and it's the only thing that we are connected. No, no, è una relazione sì basata sul fatto che sappiamo abbastanza prendere alla leggera questo lavoro che quando vuole sa essere pesante.
It is a relationship based on a shared sense of levity. They both know how to take it lightly, this type of job that sometimes weighs on you quite a lot.
Sì.
But this is obviously I mean, you know, he worked with you again later on, and we'll see him later on in a clip from The Great Beauty, but this is a kind of pretty monumental role, and in playing Andreotti, and at the time when you made this film, you said a few moments ago that it wasn't exactly an easy film to finance. I can't imagine anybody thinking, other than you, that this was a good idea to make a film about Andreotti. So why did you want to make a film about him? Was it because you were really interested in him, or was it you wanted the film to be an allegory of what was going on in Italy and politics at the time? I mean, what was the inspiration or the motivation to make a film about Andreotti?
La motivazione per fare il film su Andreotti, la prima motivazione è stata anche la più importante di tutte. Avevo letto su un libro che Andreotti quando parla con una persona tiene gli occhi chiusi.
The first motivation and the most important and the starting point was that Paolo wrote in a book that when Andreotti spoke to anybody, he closed his eyes.
E io penso che un film nasca, almeno per me, nasce più da un dettaglio che non da considerazioni di carattere troppo ampio, troppo generale.
And a film, as far as Paolo is concerned, is based more on perhaps one detail than an overall story, a wide-ranging story.
E allora ho pensato che un uomo che quando parla o ascolta tiene gli occhi chiusi può fare di tutto.
And Paolo thought that a man who, when he talks, can keep his eyes closed is capable of anything.
E allora ho cominciato a studiare Andreotti e ho deciso di fare il film.
And then Paolo, at that point, started studying the figure of Andreotti seriously, and he started writing the script.
Sì.
And in terms of Tony Servillo's performance, because it's so extraordinarily detailed, I mean, apart from sharing a love of levity and laughter, how do you work together in terms of collaborating? I mean, are you giving him lots of notes? Are you doing lots of I mean, how does the relationship with him creating the performance and you as the filmmaker work?
Ma io penso che creiamo il film con Servillo attraverso il momento in cui si crea il film è quando facciamo la prova di trucco. Avendo io fatto di fare sempre dei ruoli che sono delle maschere, la prova con il parrucchiere e con il truccatore è diventato il momento in cui abbiamo capito il film da fare.
Because Paolo always gave Tony Servillo parts that are masks, in this particular instance, the inception, if you want, was when they tried makeup on. And at that point, they realized and they started developing the character, starting from the mask, the heavy makeup.
Sì, di fatto io scrivo delle maschere, quindi capisco anch'io, ma soprattutto gli attori capiscono il personaggio quando si vedono travestiti.
Paolo is saying that he writes characters as masks. So even the actors see their characters once they see their reflection in full makeup for the character in the film.
And so, in terms of then how you film that and how you work with him, does that performance change once you get on set and start shooting? Do you revise in terms of working with him in terms of tone, or is it very much you've created the performance before you start shooting with him?
No, usually I write the scripts are very precise about the characters.
Right.
So I hope always that the actors follow the script, and this is the best way to do good things.
Yes. But there's also, I mean, in terms of collaboration, I mean, one of your longest collaborators, and you know, and you worked with him on a whole range of your films, and he's working with you now on the new television series, is your cinematographer, your DOP, Luca Begazzi. And I'd like to talk about that a bit, because one of the things, I mean, there's extraordinary sequences and shots in this movie. I mean, that whole sequence, the way it's constructed, and the lovely kind of satirical mouse, cat, etc. And I'm just wondering again about, you're very precise with the script, but in terms of the way in which you construct the movie, in terms of its visual texture and the way you, how does that work with Luca Begazzi? Is that a very formal relationship, or is it something where you're discussing ideas between you about how to construct things?
No, also because I don't speak a lot with in a general sort of way. So also with the actors or the DOP, I don't speak too much. So with the DOP, the relationship is è fatta di pochissime parole, dove io gli dico, per esempio per La grande bellezza gli avevo detto la luce si deve muovere, e lui ha cominciato a elaborare una sua idea di questa cosa.
The relationship, Paolo doesn't talk much, period. He doesn't talk much to his DOP. For instance, in the case of The Great Beauty, basically the only direction was light must move.
Sì. Però lui, insomma, in qualche maniera capisce o finge di capire quello che gli sto dicendo, e poi fa il film.
But his DOP understands or pretends he understands, and somehow the film is made.
Well, let's move on to the next, because the next film you made after the wonderful Il Divo was a big change insofar as the fact that it was your first film in the English language. It was not set in Italy in that same way. Obviously, you filmed in Ireland, and you filmed in America, and it's got a big American star. This Must Be the Place, and Sean Penn. And I'm going to show a clip now from This Must Be the Place, which is a sequence I love with Sean interacting with David Byrne, with a wonderful piece of music and a wonderful conversation. So let's see that, and then let's talk about This Must Be the Place. So could we show this next clip, please? So this was a huge change, a road movie in America with a big American star. Let's talk about the kind of the challenges of making this film and where that came from, because it was at the time it seemed like such a radically different film from your previous movies, and why did you want to do it? What was the kind of guiding principle that led you to write that script?
L'idea era di fare un film su tutto ciò che mi era piaciuto durante l'adolescenza, o quando ero giovane, insomma.
The idea was to make a film about every single thing that Paolo liked during his adolescence, during his teen years.
Quindi c'erano i film, ci sono i Talking Heads, ci sono i Cure, c'è l'America, c'è il cinema americano, tutte le cose che mi erano piaciute le ho fatte entrare in questo film.
So you find Talking Heads, The Cure, The States, American filmography, all the things that he liked.
L'idea era questa, poi c'erano anche altre idee nel film, però alla fine, più che ricordarmi le idee che hanno fatto nascere il film, mi ricordo le sensazioni, le emozioni che hanno determinato il film, e le emozioni erano quelle, insomma, provare a rivivere la propria giovinezza.
So So there are other ideas, other themes in the film, but now more than ideas, he remembers the feelings, the sensations, the emotions. So it was trying to relive, to go back in time to relive one's adolescence.
And what was it like working with Sean Penn?
Come è stato lavorare con Sean? È stato molto facile, anche molto divertente, perché Sean Penn è un uomo molto divertente, almeno in quel periodo lo era, ma di solito è molto divertente.
It's been exceedingly easy and very, very funny because Sean Penn is a funny man, or at least he was during that period.
No, ma io l'ho frequentato in quel periodo, ma di solito ero impaurito perché aveva fama di essere uno molto difficile e invece si è rivelato una persona molto molto facile, molto facile.
Paolo beforehand was a bit weary because of the reputation that precedes Sean Penn, but Sean Penn revealed himself to be a very, very easy man to deal with.
And you talked about the wariness. I mean, it's interesting because, you know, some filmmakers will talk about their apprehensiveness. I mean, Sean Penn not only has a sort of off-screen reputation, but he's widely regarded as one of the greatest actors in American cinema. And did you regard it as a challenge to work with him in that sense, or was it just a very relaxed experience?
Se è stata una sfida?
Una sfida o è stata un'esperienza rilassata? Se prima di doverlo dirigere pensavi questo è uno dei mostri?
No, prima di doverlo dirigere ero molto preoccupato, molto. Anche perché lui mi faceva anche delle domande trabocchetto, mi diceva chi ti piace come regista? Io dicevo un nome, diceva meno male che hai detto questo, se avessi detto quell'altro non avrei fatto il film, mi diceva, ovviamente non vi dico i nomi, forse devi tradurre.
Beforehand, Paolo was a bit nervous, and in fact, when they met, Sean Penn was asking him tricky questions, asking him do you like that film director, or which film director do you like? And according to the answer, he was going, yeah, that is the right question, the right answer. Had you given me the wrong answer, we would not have worked together. And we're not going to really to reveal the names.
No, I can't.
But as you said, this was obviously also a sort of homage in a way to things that you'd liked as a young man. But one of the things, and it's obviously a recurrent theme, is the way you use music in your films. And this is obviously has music front and centre because of the character, and the reason I showed that is because I love that sequence with David Byrne. And so did you always have a sequence with David Byrne, or was it a musician written into the script? Was it David Byrne that was always going to be...
No, it was written in the script to David Byrne.
And so and presumably you didn't have much problem persuading him to do that.
No, he was not so excited about the idea to play a role. Right. So at the beginning it was not so easy. Right. Me and my producer went to meet him. Then I went to New York to meet again him. No, it was not easy. He was a little bit afraid, and then at a certain point he said, "Yes, okay, I'll do that." I don't know why.
But music, obviously, apart from this film, music plays and you said at the beginning about, you thought about being a musician, but music plays a very important part in all of your work. And I sometimes, looking at some of your work, like Il Divo, it seems to me to be structured almost like a piece of music. It has an operatic feel, Il Divo, very much so. And I just wondered when you're thinking about the structure and the themes of your films, and when you're writing, is music an integral part of your thinking, or does music come along afterwards?
No, di solito viene prima e determina anche il film. Il caso del Divo, il Divo è un film sull'uomo più noioso che ci sia mai stato in Italia, e quindi l'unico modo che avevo in testa per rendere il film non noioso era attraverso la musica. Quindi la prima idea, subito dopo aver avuto l'idea di fare un film su un uomo così noioso, era di fare un film basato come se fosse un'opera rock. Quindi in quel caso, ma anche in altri casi, la musica proprio per me determina e stabilisce il tipo di film che farò.
No, music comes beforehand, and sometimes it infers meaning and gives the type of film that is going to be shot. In the case of Il Divo, it is a film about the most boring man who ever lived in Italy. So the only way to do it was to produce some sort of rock opera around him.
And talking about character in terms of the way, I mean, character of Sean Penn, but actually not so much Andreotti, but thinking about films like Consequences of Love and Great Beauty and Youth, is that, and without at the risk of sounding pretentious in this context, a lot of your films seem to be about, the leading character seems to be about emotional alienation and how they can break through and re-engage with the world. That seems to be a constant. It's certainly true of Sean Penn, because we know something terrible has happened to repress him. And in Consequences of Love, it is all, I mean, the title says it all. It is all about a man who reaches out, finding love after existing in a box, essentially. Do you recognise that in terms of that is something that you want to return to, about how your characters have to reach out and re-engage emotionally and break out from being repressed? Is that something that you would recognise?
Sì, diciamo che io faccio sempre, mi occupo solo di due cose, di persone che penso sia il problema di tutti noi, cioè che sono a disagio con la vita, con lo stare al mondo, e come se non bastasse questo disagio c'è di mezzo il tempo, cioè il tempo scorre, peggiora le cose, aumenta il disagio e ci porta anche pian pianino verso la morte. Tutto questo cerco di farlo in modo il più divertente possibile, altrimenti mi ammazzerei prima di fare il film.
Well, Paolo is saying that he basically treats only two themes, that of a certain sense of malaise, so trying to get back, but this malaise increases, especially when the second theme is treated, time, and the fact that we're all approaching death. It tries to treat these two themes in the funniest possible way, otherwise we would all kill ourselves before a film is even started.
Però sono sempre personaggi così, così. Sono malati di solitudine perché sono a disagio con il mondo. E queste sono le caratteristiche. A un certo punto provano a cercare di fare i conti con tutto questo.
But there are characters such as this. They are disconnected, they feel unease about it. At a certain point, they try to draw some sort of links and conclusions, and
poi perdono, ovviamente.
And then that they do not succeed, they lose because.
Perché il disagio dello stare al mondo è un problema irrisolvibile.
Because this problem doesn't have a solution. It is irresolvable.
But you don't appear to be a pessimist. You seem, I mean, I think your work has an extraordinary streak of optimism in it. Yeah, I mean, you said they fail, and they do fail, but there is always, it always seems to me that in just about all of your work, there is a great sense of people trying to re-engage, of something happening to change their lives, and even if they fail, at least they're trying to change. Would you say you're an optimistic filmmaker?
Se io sono ottimista.
Come regista.
No, non lo so. Cioè, mi risulta difficile ragionare in termini di pessimismo e di ottimismo. Cerco di essere realistico. diciamo.
Paolo finds it difficult to deal with the concept of optimism and pessimism. He tries to be a realist.
Yes.
Sì. Sì, no, però mi sono dimenticato che poi in realtà non è così devastata la faccenda. Alle volte interviene l'amore, che è qualcosa che modifica un po' l'andamento delle cose umane.
He forgot to say beforehand that it's not everything so thoroughly devastating, because sometimes love arrives and it tweaks things
Sì.
slightly.
Non necessariamente l'amore fra uomo e donna, insomma l'amore sentimentale, anche l'amore per i figli, per i padri ritrovati, insomma.
Not necessarily a type of romantic love. It could be love between parents and sons and daughters, for a father.
Sì. Sì, insomma, questo disagio dello stare al mondo che racconto nei film corrisponde al fatto che si ha un rapporto con i sentimenti alle volte distante. Ogni tanto, per fortuna, capita di riavvicinarsi ai sentimenti, di riviverli in una maniera, diciamo, naturale. E questo mi fa migliorare un po' le cose.
Perhaps the key point of this uneasiness is the fact that we become disengaged from our own feelings, and sometimes when you manage to reconnect, then there is a way back in.
Mm-hmm. Non so cosa hai detto.
C'è una maniera di ricollegare.
Sì.
And then, of course, after you'd made This Must Be the Place, you came back to Italy. You came back very much to Rome with The Great Beauty, which achieved extraordinary critical and commercial success and won you an Academy Award and a BAFTA over here. And we're going to show a clip from the opening sequence, which I think, you know, so many critics have talked about, this extraordinary bravura sequence at the party, and we're just going to show a clip from the party when Tony Servillo's Jeb appears at the party. So let's just see this clip from the rather wonderful beginning of The Great Beauty. The thing about there's obviously many things we can talk about in terms of the Great Beauty, but I'm very interested in, first off, in terms of your relationship with, in some sense, representing Italy. I mean, you've done this in different ways, and obviously in Il Divo you were looking to a certain extent at the past and about Italian political history, but this is very much kind of your view in a satirical way and from the point of view of a misanthrope and a writer, a portrait of Italy. And is that what you wanted to do? You wanted to convey something about your own country in The Great Beauty? Was it very much driven by the character? I'm just wondering about what you thought were the essential themes of The Great Beauty.
Ma era la storia, la grande bellezza è la storia di un uomo, come tutti i film che ho fatto finora, e perché è l'unica cosa che proprio mi interessa, è raccontare delle persone. E poi indirettamente è anche un film sull'Italia, perché raccontando uno scrittore che vive dentro e osserva la società italiana, anche quella più degenerata, però quella più avvolta nello squallore, ecco. Quindi indirettamente anche un racconto dell'Italia. Il mio problema, che è il problema anche di Giuseppe Gambardella, è che quello squallore sotto sotto ci piace, perché a noi l'Italia ci piace così.
The film is a film about a man.
Questo appartiene all'indicibile, quello che non si può dire, ma che in realtà è così.
The film is about a man, like all his other films, but through the character, we see a type of Italy and the type of Italy he deals with. The problem with that type of Italy is that it is wrapped in squalor, and what remains untold, what it is ineffable, is that both the character and Paolo have something in common, is that at the end of the day they like Italy that way. That is an aspect of Italy, that wrapping up in squalor is something that they like.
Sì. Sì, perché piace perché piace perché mette in moto un sentimento di tenerezza, cioè quel mondo rappresentato di quell'Italia ha uno slancio molto vitale, ma totalmente inutile, che veramente non serve a nulla, non serve a migliorarsi, non serve a migliorare, e questo mi fa molta tenerezza.
Because it moves you to some sort of tenderness, you're almost moved by it, because it has a very, very vital pulsations, throws, but they're not aimed at anything. So in the end, they're squandered.
This is also the movie that you started in a playful way, and you continue this very much in youth. You started playing with satire about the movies, or the paraphernalia of the movies, of actors talking in ridiculous fashions about their work and what they may and may be doing. And it seems you've become, even though, as I say, playful rather than angry about it, but you do start satirizing your own profession, your own work, and your own the environs of making films in The Great Beauty. Was that because suddenly you'd been exposed, you'd had more and more experience of making films? You'd made films in America, and more of the world, the paraphernalia, and frankly the bull of filmmaking had started to penetrate you. It started to you started to be exposed to more of it, to more of that.
Sorry, I'm not sure that I understand.
In questo film vediamo soprattutto degli elementi che si inseriscono, nei quali prende in giro lo stesso mondo di fare il cinema e il film. È qualcosa che ti è venuto in mente perché per esempio sei andato anche a fare film negli Stati Uniti, a quale momento si è inserita questa cosa? Perché parli anche delle stronzate che circondano il fatto di fare film, e come gli attori per esempio parlano della loro professione.
No, non penso che sia il frutto del fatto che avessi già fatto altri film, di cui qualcuno fuori dall'Italia. Anche perché La grande bellezza è un film che volevo fare da tantissimi anni e non trovavo il modo, avevo solamente degli elementi che tra di loro non si riuscivano a legare. E quindi, no, anzi, è un film secondo me riuscito proprio perché è un film privo di tutta l'esperienza che uno ha accumulato. Cioè penso che l'esperienza nel fare film non aiuti, possa creare solamente dei problemi, possa creare solamente delle ripetizioni.
No, it wasn't, because The Great Beauty was a film that Paolo wanted to do for a great number of years. He had elements and he would not get them together. So in a way, it's not through experience that these aspects that you focused on came about. And in a way, experience really does not help. It just lends you to the danger of repetition in filmmaking.
And in terms of the filmmaking itself, I mean, we've got your long-term producer. I think pretty much every film Nicola has worked on with you. And I wanted to ask you a bit more about that kind of collaboration. I mean, we talked about Luca Bigazzi and as your DOP, and you sort of talking to him telepathically, practically, rather than
telepathically.
rather than verbally. But I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about, because you've worked with Indigo, with Nicola, for all of these films, and what. And apart from the fact that he goes out with his colleagues and raises money, how does that creative relationship work? I mean, apart from raising the money.
Com'è il mio rapporto creativo con
Nicola, e sappiamo che i produttori trovano i soldi, ma al di là di quella, a parte la parte finanziaria, visto che avete collaborato.
Sì, no, ma Nicola Giuliano è non solo il mio produttore, anche il mio migliore amico ed è anche la persona con cui mi trovo meglio. Infatti il pericolo di fare film insieme è che certe cose possono piacere solo a me e a lui, e infatti è capitato in passato, cioè abbiamo per esempio un senso dello humor per cui io rido alle sue cose e lui alle mie, ma nessun altro ride. e quindi siamo spesso terrorizzati che questo poi si rifletta, e infatti è capitato che al cinema, alla proiezione di un mio film, abbiamo riso solo io e lui e nessuno rideva. Quindi no, abbiamo una relazione ormai così stretta e intima che dobbiamo solo imparare a conoscere di più fuori, perché ci conosciamo.
Nicola Giuliano is producer at Indigo Films, and Paolo have a really close relationship. Paolo described him as his best friend. The real problem there is that they share a very peculiar sense of humor. So there is a really real danger that what they like, they would be the only two people to like. So it did happen that in previous films that there were, during screenings, there were the only two people laughing. So hopefully now that they know each other that well, they will start knowing the world a bit better.
Noi siamo un po' come quei due nerd che a 15 anni vanno a suonare nel garage da soli e dicono che stanno facendo una musica bellissima, poi escono dal garage e scoprono che tutti quanti li detestano, ti trovano che sia bruttissimo.
They're like the two 15-year-old spotty nerds who shut themselves into the garage and start making music, and they think that is the end of the world music, and then they get out of the garage, nobody likes them or their music.
Well, you're not doing too badly in terms of people liking your films, actually. You seem to have got that right. But in terms of the process, and we're going to talk about a little bit about Youth. I mean, some people here may have seen it, but a lot of people won't. So we're not going to give away lots about Youth in case lots of people are going to the screening later. But I wanted to ask you, in terms of the process of filmmaking, we've talked about the script writing, we've talked about the work with your cinematographer. But in terms of the stages of making a film, what's the bit you enjoy the most and what's the bit you like least?
Qual è il momento che mi piace di più?
Nel processo.
Sicuramente scrivere. Writing is the most beautiful moment. È il momento in cui sono da solo e posso permettermi qualunque libertà, anche fisica, cioè non devo dar conto a nessuno, sono a casa da solo e quindi posso commuovermi, posso avere dei deliri di onnipotenza e nessuno mi giudica. Posso fare qualsiasi cosa.
The writing stage is by far the best because he's on his own, he can do anything he likes, and he can give in to certain emotions, he can cry, he can think he's omnipotent, and nobody is going to tell him off for it.
Fino a che non entra, ogni tanto entra questa signora che fa le pulizie a casa, entra e mi trova sempre in una condizione... Cioè quando mi trova nel delirio di onnipotenza non so cosa può pensare.
Sometimes the only drawback is that sometimes the cleaning lady enters the room, and when she finds him in his delirium of omnipotence, Paolo is not quite sure what she thinks.
And what about the shooting, the post-production? Because you've now worked, again, I think you've worked with the same editor for a whole number of years, and how does that relationship work? I mean, I've talked to filmmakers who've talked about their relationship with editors in extremes. I mean, one is that I've heard filmmakers talk about how essentially they're more or less telling the editor exactly what to do, and I've had other examples of filmmakers like Stephen Frears. Stephen Frears pretends that he sleeps in the floor of the editing office. Occasionally pops up and an editor shows him a sequence and he says that's fine, and he goes back to sleep again. How do you sit in terms of your working with your editor and the post-production process?
Ma come lavoro con il montatore? Io tra questi due estremi. No, in realtà la prima stesura di montaggio è un po' come la scrittura, è molto eccitante, anche lì non sono solo, sono giusto con un'altra persona che però conosco bene, e quindi anche lì posso sentirmi libero. E quindi lavoriamo elaborando idee insieme e proviamo ad applicarle. Però io ho una durata molto, la mia pazienza finisce presto al montaggio, cioè finita la prima stesura del montaggio, e per me il film è un po' come finito, tutto il resto quindi diventa solo un lavoro molto faticoso.
Something like writing, the first edit, Paolo finds really exciting. So he's not alone at that stage. He's got his editor. They know each other. Everything is very exciting. After the first edit, the first rough edit is done, Paolo almost thinks that is the end of the film. So his attention span at that point wanes slightly.
Sì, quindi prendo un po' di vacanza, poi ritorniamo a lavorare col montatore, però devo confessare che con gli anni mi pesa sempre di più.
So at that point it takes a holiday and then he goes back and works with the editor, but he has to confess that along the years this part, the final edit, is weighing on him more and more.
And would you say that's your least favourite bit of making the film?
Quindi questa è la tua parte meno favorita?
No, la parte meno favorita è fare gli incontri con la stampa. Quella là.
No, the least favorite part are interviews and meeting the media.
No, ma non perché non mi piaccia la stampa, è perché non ci si trova con i tempi, cioè la stampa vuole parlare di una cosa nuova e che per me è una cosa vecchissima.
But because they're disjointed, because the media want to talk about something that is brand new for them, but for Paolo is very old.
Well, we're going to talk about the most recent thing that's still quite old for you, but is very new for everybody in this room, namely Youth. Which we're delighted to be premiering in the London Film Festival this evening and is released in January here in the UK. And I say I don't want to spoil the film for people who haven't seen it yet, but this again it's a film in the English language with an amazing cast, set primarily in Switzerland, and it's I think it's I had the pleasure of seeing it in Cannes and the film's been premiered in Toronto and has received great acclaim wherever it's gone. And we're going to see a sequence now, a short sequence where you see Michael Caine, who's obviously one of the leading characters, a retired composer, being massaged whilst he's having a conversation with his daughter, played by Rachel Weisz. Let's just see this piece from Youth. Bright people are part of. You will realise that's not Rachel Weisz, and it's a different massage sequence. Sorry, but still a very nice one all the same. But in terms of Youth, one of the things I wanted to ask you, because it's a story about old men, really. It's a story about old men together in a hotel, a kind of spa resort. Trying to work out what to do with the rest of their lives in a way, and that's about as much of the plot as I probably should say. But Harvey Keitel is there with Michael Caine and their families, their sons and their daughters impinge on the story, and other characters come into it, including a film actor played by Paul Dano in it, and there's even a wonderful cameo from Jane Fonda later in the film, but I'm wondering, because this has a lot of satirical elements in it. It really seems to me to kind of confirm that your favourite kind of tone as a filmmaker is as a humorist, as a satirical humorist. Would you agree that that's where you're coming from?
I agree. My only uno dei miei obiettivi, il mio obiettivo primario è proprio quello, delle cose che mi farebbe più piacere in un film, mi fa più piacere in un film è riuscire a far ridere, senza dover far ridere in una maniera sciocca, insomma, Ma in realtà io non faccio altro che cercare di seguire una tradizione italiana di cinema, che è quella di coniugare dramma e commedia, cioè che al massimo momento del dramma ricordare a tutti che poi non è così seria la faccenda e al massimo momento di divertimento ricordare che non è così divertente. Ecco.
Definitely. It is one of the main objectives, and Paolo would be really pleased to hear that people laugh, not in a stupid way, but in a way that goes back to a very long Italian tradition of drama into comedy. So at the highest moment of comedy, you realize that, well, things are not that funny. Likewise, at the deepest point of drama, you find funny elements.
And you've been tagged, and this is by the press. You've been tagged a number of times in your career. It came up in the Great Beauty. A lot of critical references about the comparison with Fellini. And do you find that a burden? Does it irritate you when people compare you with Fellini? Are you pleased to be compared with him? Because that's a referent that maybe it's a shortcut for critics to make comparisons with Fellini. But do you recognise that?
No, sì, cioè seguo Fellini, non,
No,
no,
siccome è stato
se mi
detto dalla
irrita.
stampa,
Yeah.
se lo trovi un peso, se ti irrita, se capisci perché venne fatto o se pensi che siano un po' pigri e che sia una scorciatoia per abbonarti a Fellini.
No, io no. No, io sono un po' stanchino perché mi dicono sempre che vorrei fare Fellini, ma che non se ne parla proprio, sono lontanissimo, quindi un po' mi sono scocciato. Però alle volte è una semplificazione, in qualche maniera c'è anche del vero, perché Fellini, proprio quello che dicevo prima, Fellini è stato forse il più bravo di tutti in Italia a mettere insieme dramma e commedia. Poi ci sono stati tanti altri registi e poi in ultimo ci sono anch'io e tanti altri miei colleghi, ma è una cosa che è proprio l'elemento dominante del cinema italiano. Anche Antonioni, che è considerato il regista più serio del cinema italiano, è un regista che ha scritto un sacco di commedie e che ha molti elementi di ironia dentro i suoi film, molto stemperati, ma è proprio un filo comune.
No, if Paolo is slightly tired about it, it's because when the media mentions Fellini, is in terms of saying it wants to be Fellini, but it cannot aspire to those heights. But going back to the theme, it's just a recurring theme. It's typically Italian. Fellini was maybe the greatest of them all in combining drama and comedy. So in that respect, yes. But alongside Fellini, there were so many others, as there are so many others alongside Paolo of his contemporaries. Even Antonioni, who is perhaps considered the most serious of filmmakers of his generation, had like a seam of irony going through his films.
So why, I say without giving too much away about the plot, but what led you to decide that this, I mean, you've got Michael Caine, and for those of you who haven't seen it yet, Michael Caine is extraordinary in this film. I mean, I think it's one of his great late performances in his career, and it's great to see him as a leading man again, rather than a supporting character in a Batman movie. It's fantastic to see him front and centre, and acting brilliantly with Harvey Keitel, and you've assembled this cast. But what led you to make because you could have presumably made this film in Italy, in Italian. It didn't have to have an English actor, an American actor, or several American actors. What led you to create it as an international production and set it in Switzerland?
Perché ho fatto un film?
Potevi farlo in
Sì.
Italia con attori italiani, per cui
Sì.
perché prima diceva principalmente
Sì, sì.
per quello che riguarda Michael Caine,
Sì.
che è bello vederlo come protagonista di nuovo invece che fare il personaggio.
No, in realtà, dato che nella mia idea la musica è qualcosa di veramente alto e come tutti quelli che avrebbero voluto fare una cosa e non l'hanno fatta tendono ad idealizzarla, no? Io avrei voluto tanto fare la musica, ma no. Quindi per me l'idea di un direttore di orchestra o di un compositore di musica classica è una figura così alta che aveva bisogno di un attore altrettanto alto. E di quell'età, francamente, per me l'unico nome possibile era Michael Caine, proprio in generale nel mondo.
Like anybody who aspired to be something and then couldn't, in this case we go back to the idea of being a musician. Paolo has idealized the idea of musicians, and something that you were trying not to give away, but he is a musician in this film. And Paolo thought that he needed somebody of the highest caliber. Of that generation, the only person he could think of was Michael Caine.
So the film was written for Michael Caine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You never thought about another actor?
No.
Yeah. Well, it shows because it's fantastic. And I could ask you lots more about it, but I'm not going to, because I'm going to open it up to our audience to ask you a few questions now.
No, ma per me non è tanto un problema, perché l'inglese è una lingua che quando viene recitata ha proprio una musicalità, quindi io pur non capendo spesso le parole, a parte che le capisco perché le ho scritte io in italiano, me le sono lette, però pur quando non capisco, insomma vado dietro a riconoscere un ritmo musicale, se sento che c'è un ritmo dico buona, se no dico rifacciamola. Ma in realtà poi il lavoro vero del regista è proprio quello, cioè è come un batterista che tiene il tempo, insomma, deve sempre tenere il tempo, il ritmo delle cose.
It's not so much of a problem because there is a musicality to English, and also Paolo wrote the words, so if he doesn't understand every single one when it is re-said in English, but he knows what he's talking about. But he was saying that after all, that is the main role of a film director, is to keep the rhythm very much like a drummer does in a band.
No, non sono nel copione. I primi film che ho fatto, i primi 4-5 film che ho fatto, 4 film, quando facevo i sopralluoghi, fotografavo i posti come li avrei voluti filmare e ragionavo sulle fotografie dei sopralluoghi e da lì scrivevo le inquadrature, cioè ideavo le inquadrature prima di andare a girare. Poi negli ultimi film ho cambiato metodo invece, non preparo nulla, vado sul set e lì mi vengono in mente le inquadrature, vedendo un po' il set, vedendo le comparse che arrivano, cioè mi lascio un po' suggestionare da quello che succede la mattina. Ho cambiato metodo, non so perché, ma all'improvviso ho cambiato.
His method has changed. For his first 4 films, when he used to go on location scouting, it would take photographs, and those photographs would decide the shots. He doesn't know how or why, but he changed his method. And now when he turns on set in the morning, according to the set, the extras even, those elements decide, together with the DOP, they decide the shot.
Mi autocensuro quando le cose non mi sembrano più verosimili.
He applies some sort of censorship on himself when things cease to be believable.
Però la cosa della giraffa è indicativa perché per me è molto verosimile, perché un mago che conosco mi ha detto, molto convinto, magari bleffa, che lui ha fatto scomparire un elefante vicino al Colosseo. Io ho semplicemente cambiato il luogo e l'animale, quindi mi sembrava verosimile a me.
But you mentioned a giraffe. That is believable to Paolo because a magician, friend of his, said he once made an elephant disappear near the Colosseum. So basically he changed animal and location, but that is still within the realms of credibility.
So we're going to have to stop, I'm afraid. But I think we've had a really insightful chat with Paolo today. We've heard about the director being like a drummer, providing the rhythm. I think that's a brilliant analogy. And hearing you talk about your work is so enlightening. And I think everyone's going to be very excited, those who haven't seen it, to see Youth, which is, for me, another fantastic entry in your canon of filmmaking. So it's been a great pleasure to welcome you here today. Thank you very much to Stefania for translating, and thank you very much, Paolo Sorrentino.